This website is bls.gov. That's Bureau of Labor Statistics.government. This website is maintained by the federal government, and it pulls information from the U.S. Census and from the IRS websites and tax information collected from businesses. It's a really good resource for evaluating jobs, for getting economic lookouts on career growth, education standards, compensation for a career, and the daily activities that fall within a particular job title. So up here in the top right, this is where you'll start looking for the different jobs that you pull off of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or the careers that you've already decided you want to pursue. I'm going to type in nurse. Now in my search results here, you'll notice that there are different types of nurses: nurse practitioners, registered nurses, orderlies, anesthesiologists, midwives, so on and so forth. One of the things that I really like about the Bureau of Labor Statistics is that, I'm going to click on registered nurses here, is that it's a good way not only to find the particular career that you're looking for, but also to find jobs that exist that you might not have known exist. So now that I'm in the Occupation Outlook Handbook for this particular job, I'm on a summary tab here, but I want to talk first about the similar occupations over here on the right. So registered nurses are similar to dental hygienists, to EMTs, to licensed vocational nurses, to physician assistants, and to social workers. So if you've considered being a registered nurse or pursuing a nursing license, do you know what the specific differences are between all of these different jobs? And what is it that you're going to get out of being a nurse that you wouldn't get out of being a respiratory therapist or a physician's assistant? One of the really interesting things to think about here, respiratory therapists require an associate's degree and they make $60,000 a year. If we go back up to our summary for registered nurses, it requires a bachelor's degree, so that's an extra roughly 2 years of education, and the compensation is only about $10,000 a year different. Is that worth the extra education? Are there more career opportunities in one field or the other? Or is it worth working in a hospital with particular types of patients versus working in an outpatient facility with a different set of patients? The Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Occupation Outlook Handbook, this is where you can go to answer those sorts of questions, to specifically pin down what one occupation has that another occupation does not. And you're really going to benefit from this if you have several jobs and you compare them to each other. So when actually looking at the information for registered nurses, we'll start here on the summary page. 2017 median pay was $70,000 a year. Well, that's pretty good. I'd like to make that much money. Don't know about you. But how does that fare on a national scale? So clicking on the question mark, it turns out that in 2017, the median annual wage for all workers in the U.S. is $37,000. Well, round it, say $38,000. That means that registered nurses make almost double the national average. So that is a pretty good pay scale. There are 3 million nurses, specifically registered nurses, in America, and the job outlook for the next 10 years is 15% much faster than average. These two numbers are pretty important to consider when you're looking at a job. The reason these numbers are important is because it shows you how competitive that field is. On average, jobs grow at about 7% per year. So if a career is growing at 15%, that means that that field is expanding faster than the population and economic growth of the country. There will be more demand for this career, which means it will be easier to actually get hired once you graduate. With 3 million nurses, registered nurses, working in America, on any annual basis, how many of those nurses are going to retire? How many of them are going to quit or find a new job, a new career to pursue? So if you say maybe 1 to 2% turnover, that's a pretty sizable number. That means a lot of job openings from what already exists, plus a lot of new openings that haven't been filled at all. Compare this with something like dosimetry, where there are only 10,000 in the country, and it only grows at about 2 to 3%. It'll be a lot harder to find a job in that field than it would be in nursing. You can use the links on the first page here. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll let you explore the website on your own. But I do want to point out that the more information, including links to ONET is a website that we will be using later on in the semester. And so the links here to ONET for registered nurse, and yes, I want to continue to ONET, will bring me here to ONET Online. The website is onetonline.org. So I've already pulled up registered nurses, and under summary, I get a list of the different tasks that are typically performed. I see the different technology skills that are needed for this career. Knowledge, not specifically the field or the degree, but the day-to-day, this is what you deal with, and so you'll need some exposure to these fields. One of the interesting things about ONET is that it will also tell you roughly percentage-wise how often a different skill or task is actually utilized in that field. If you go to details, you'll see a little more information about what's going on in each of the different categories. So this is another website that I strongly suggest you spend some time familiarizing yourself with, and later on in the semester we'll utilize this website as part of your career exploration project. So I'm going to go back to bls.gov. I'm currently on the More Info tab. I'm going to go back to How to Become One. This is one of the other really important areas when comparing different careers and jobs with one another. It's typically talked about that in order to get a job, you need an education. What does that mean? You go to college. How do you get out of college? You get a degree. Does a degree get you into nursing? Well, sort of. It's the first step, but you won't ever get a job as a registered nurse if all you have is a degree in nursing. Instead, you need specific licenses, certifications, and registrations. With different career fields that you might be considering, it's important to know what type of license you need. An important thing to be aware of that people typically don't talk about is that you can generally get a license or a certification or a registration without having to go to college. If you want to be an educator, if you want to be a teacher, for instance, going to college and getting a degree in education will help you become a teacher. But in order to actually work as a teacher, you'll need to go to the state that you want to work in and pass their licensing exam. If you go to college, get 1 semester of classes, then go take the test and pass it with the state, you don't need the degree in education. And a lot of licenses and certifications have that option, but you'll need to specifically look through the licensing board that regulates the job and the industry that you're pursuing. And keep in mind that just getting out of college is your education. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your license at the end of it. Hi, sweetie. Hey, I'm recording, so give me about 10 minutes and then I'll be done. And one last tool that I want to specifically show you on this website is that if you go up to the top and click on State and Area Data, and click on the Occupation Employment Statistics for Registered Nurses, or whichever field you're looking at, you'll get a breakdown of the variation in different states throughout America as far as the employment. So you'll see that the darker the state, the more people there are working in that state. So here in Texas we've got 200,000 registered nurses, while in Montana we only have 10,000, giving you an idea of how competitive each of those states is going to be. We can also see that in Montana the annual median wage is 66,000. In Texas it's 72. So more pay and more opportunity. The location quotient is the same thing, it's just normalized by the population of that state. And then the annual mean wage of each state. Again, Montana was 66, Texas is down here at 72, California is 102. So again, when considering your licensing that comes after your education, keep in mind that a license in one state may not necessarily translate into a license in a different state, that career opportunities in one state might not be the same as they are in a different state. And if you plan to transfer out of state, or if you plan to live in a different state and get a job there, it's important to know what the different economic outlooks are going to be in those locations.